Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my first recorded webcast. The content of this will focus more on the teacher's resiliency towards the new normal in education. I am Jbertfernandez, a faculty member of Systems Plus College Foundation Main Campus, Balibago, Angeles City. I want to start this session with these pictures. This is the traditional 21st century classroom and teaching learning setup we practiced. Face-to-face, collaborative activities, and so on. Unfortunately, last month of 2019, the world experienced a pandemic. Here comes coronavirus or the COVID-19. This pandemic significantly affected all sectors. Millions of people experience retrenchment. The economy is declining. Government to government is taking loan here and there. Shortage of foods due to hoarding. People belonging to the poverty belt are suffering. Frontliners are getting sick. The number of COVID cases is increasing. Private sectors are closing. Businesses are filing bankruptcy. The government and its agencies, private sectors, and businesses are all greatly affected by this pandemic. In our case, in the education sector, we too are affected. This is the reason why we are reshaping the educational system we have at the moment. The normal face-to-face learning will not be possible for this school year. That is why we are transitioning from normal to the new normal. As we embrace this normal thing in education, let us try to think of the positive side of it. Maybe this is the time for us to try new modalities in education, since we are now in a more advanced and technologically acclaimed environment. Also, this can be a good sign for our depth ed admins to redefine and reshape our curriculum. With this, as we are gearing up with the opening of classes, I want to introduce Sam. Let us talk about Sam. The idea, the idea, the idea about Sam was through the inspiration of Dr. Ed Fermin. I am lucky enough to attend a Zoom conference with him last May, sponsored by a publishing company. So most of the questions used in the survey for this session were lifted from his topic, but I modified and contextualized the questions. For the whole session, I will be showing you the results of the survey given to the random teachers from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao to represent teachers in the country. SAM stands for Shift, Approach, and Match. In our part as teachers, it is very challenging to be facing this school year in the midst of the pandemic. This, this session will suggest what are the things to be done before the opening of classes. As I mentioned earlier, the content of this result the content is the result of the survey given to random teachers, both private and public schools. So to start, I want to pose this question. As a teacher, what are your views about the learner during and beyond COVID should we focus on? So as you can see on the screen, three words dominating the space: safety, health, and guidance. These are the most common answers of the teachers. These words will be our basis in aligning and merging the ideas collated from this question. This slideshow will now show the consolidated answers. The teacher respondents are after our learner safety, health, and guidance. Survival and resiliency can be categorized under safety. If we are all resilient, especially to our students or learners, there will be a high chance of surviving this pandemic. While it is also true that psychological aspect and mental health of the learners are also affected during this quarantine, which is more on health issues. Lastly, guidance is also the concern of the teachers. The values formation, how learners how learners' interests and needs are addressed, how can they acquire real life lessons or skills, and how their individual differences affect their learning. After knowing teachers' views about their learners, let us talk about the shift. If we say shift, there are things to be repositioned and transferred. The normal physical interaction we do with our students and fellow teachers can no longer be done at the moment. Moreover, online or modular distant learning will also be used as our modalities for the meantime. Let us try to determine the teacher's pulse about this question. As the result of the pandemic, how different will our learners be? So based on the results of the survey, option B, hoping for new education trends got the highest percentage. Learners will be hoping for new trends. Since there is a big lift in the education sector, educational institutions are busy planning and preparing for the new normal education. And how will they be bringing quality education to their stakeholders? Teacher respondents also believe that learners' socialization will take the edge off and it will lead them to agitation. Imagine our students shifting from active social interaction to a passive one. What do you think will happen? Probably they will resist this new learning mode, causing them to feel agitated, and maybe some of them will experience anxiety. On the other hand, teachers also think of issues on self confidence and self esteem. The new learning setup or environment will really give every learner a hard time to adapt, leading them to become taciturn in dealing with their future. They are most likely quiet and they don't want to get involved, which will lead them the way for them to become forlorn learners. As we can see from the items given in the survey, these should be the starting points that we need to deal with in preparation for this school year. As teachers, we don't need to start automatically our lessons, delivery modes, and so on. We must first identify or determine where our students are. Begin where the learners are. As we start knowing where our students are, let us try to reflect on the next question. How can we sustain learning closer to the realities of our learners, their families, and to the community? As you can see on the screen, our teacher respondents are convinced that online learning can sustain and bring learning closer to the learners, their families, and their community. Before we proceed, I want to emphasize other answers like compassion. Compassion is really needed at this time. Our learners need that. If we teachers are passionate enough to understand their situation, we can establish an engaging support system. So in this slide, I will show the consolidated answers. I went over to their answers and came up with two prominent responses: online learning and involvement. So, online learning is given as the topmost response, but if you are going to read all their answers, it boils down to involvement. So, if we say online learning, it talks about the use of technology, distance e-learning, internet access, using blended strategies and online teaching. If we say involvement, it is more on community participation, collaboration from collaboration between school and the community and the family, establishing support system, home visitation, and constant follow-up. For this new normal education, or for this new normal thing, home will be the new school, and the possible learning delivery modes under the new normal education will be blended learning, online learning, modular based learning, or homeschooling. Since home will be the venue for the most learning process, let us try to address their issues by dealing with these questions under approach. But before we proceed to that question, I want I used a 5-point Likert scale to analyze and interpret the responses of our teacher respondents. So this is the question. With these approaches, how can we make it more learner-centered? So the options are here. To address the issues as we shift to the new normal, we should know first what to do. I provided our teacher respondents choices to answer the question. They strongly agree that that the actual needs and concern of students must be heard. Knowing their needs and concerns will give us the basis of designing approaches that fits for them. Reinforcement of parents' involvement is also needed. This new normal thing in education, parents' guidance and presence is encouraged in the learning process. That is, involvement and establishing an engaged support system. The respondents strongly agree that accessible learning modalities should be made available in both parents and children. The modalities to be used must be explained so that parents will also be oriented for proper collaboration between the school and parents. Learning resources must also be parent and child friendly. Meanwhile, the respondents agree that providing learning modality options can be a good foundation of operative learning resources and in promoting learners' preference and control. How? By doing a heart-to-heart academic conversation with the learners. As teachers, we should always lend our ears to our students. Having a dialogue or just a simple conversation with them is a good way to start a good collaboration. So, as teachers, our responsibility now is to build a sustainable learning environment that will address our learners' need. So, how can we build this sustainable learning environment amid the great health crisis? Well, let us try to figure out through this question. What is your greatest fear about sustainability of these learning modalities to our students? So the topmost answer in this question is connection, followed by focus. Since most of us will be using online learning, connection is really a problem. The Philippines is one of the countries with a slow internet connection, sixth in Southeast Asia, and 97th in the world based on the average speed of 5 gigabytes download as of 2018. Next is focus. Learners' attention is also a factor to consider. Some learners are prone to distractions, which will lead to ineffective learning, putting the authenticity and validity of effective learning outcome into contentious one. I also would like to emphasize the other responses. The limitation and lack of learning resources can cause uncertain learning, and with parents' passive cooperation, there will be no control of usage and might lead our learners to commit cybercrime or be the victim of cybercrime. Consistency of the implementation must be observed to sustain these learning modalities. This time, this is the time that we will be needing the match. It will help us to choose the appropriate strategies, learning resources, and materials. Let us try to analyze the last question given to the respondents. The question is, which strategy will be most helpful to us and for the learners during the teaching learning process? So for this, the respondents strongly agree that being high spirited during online or virtual class discussion is most helpful to use during this new normal thing. For this, the respondents strongly agree that being high spirited during online or virtual class discussion is the most helpful to use during this new normal thing. This is a great challenge for us, hooking students' interest and attention to our lessons. To answer this, based from the result, teacher respondents believe that ceaseless lesson contents and appropriate activities or tasks supported by user-friendly platforms can be a great help. Meanwhile, they agree that repurposing our most used traditional teaching technique to a modernized one can also help in making the teaching learning process effective and efficient. Lastly, our respondents reminded us that in this time of pandemic, we should adjust our expectation and standards. We need to become flexible as the educational system is flexible. In this way, we can strengthen the bridge of learning even in the absence of face to face learning. To wrap up the topic about SAM, shape, approach, and match, let us consider the shift. Socialization will not take the edge off because we are hoping for new education trends that it will prevent issues on self-confidence and self-esteem, that there will be no forlorn learners and will not become taciturn in dealing with what his or her future be like. So as we shift, let us address the approach to be taken. Actual needs and concern of students must be heard and provide learning modality options so as to promote learners' preference and control of their learning, that will also reinforce parents' involvement in designing operative learning resources with accessible learning modalities for both parent and child, full of appropriate causative tasks, activities, and lessons integrated with heart-to-heart academic conversation with your students. With the approach in shifting to new normal, let us strengthen the bridge with the appropriate match. Make use of user-friendly platforms and be flexible enough to adjust your expectation and standards by trying to repurpose our most used traditional teaching technique to a modernized one with ceaseless lesson contents and appropriate activities or tasks delivered in a high-spirited approach during online or virtual discussion. Let us all be open-minded as we shift to new normal and address the approach so that we can use the appropriate match for our learners. With that, thank you everyone for watching my first webcast. I would like to extend my gratitude and appreciation to all teachers who participated in the survey. Without you, this content will not be materialized. An e-certificate will be provided as a sign of gratefulness and appreciation for finishing the whole webcast session. If you wish to have a copy of the presentation, you may send your request using the email provided in the description. Thank you until the next webcast session.